Someone is calling Blair's name. She yells for him to wake up immediately. The whole room laughs, asking why he still studies there. The boy asks where he is. Someone pulls the sleeve of his shirt. The girl tells Blair that Brittany will call again. Looking back, he sees the magnificent woman in front of him. Angrily, she asks if Blair forgot where he is. The boy says that this woman is his great teacher. She pulls his ear. His teacher says she can't believe he's sleeping in class and immediately asks Blair to answer math question 15. The protagonist doesn't know what to do, but putting his hand on his forehead, he says he understood the problem. The teacher says he can answer the question by tomorrow, and that this is the punishment for sleeping. The whole room continues laughing at him, saying he will never be able to solve such a difficult problem. But Blair seems very confident. She notices that the boy's confidence is at the level of an experienced academic. The miserable one is a genius and answers correctly, blushing. The teacher says that's impossible. Our boy asks if he can go to the bathroom, and she says yes. The room is restless after this little demonstration. Looking at the board, he sees that the calculations are correct. Everyone screams in shock as our boy walks through the school. In his mind, he says that expression doesn't need a progression calculation, it's just a crossing. Chen Lu is just an ordinary teacher who believes in mathematics. He worked hard for a long time and will finally receive the title of senior professional next year. But when he was taking the exam, he dozed off, and when he woke up, he was in another world. The protagonist says this is not scientific and calls for Newton to help him. Looking closely, he realizes he is now a boy bad at math, and the current world values it highly. Still, he is impressed that the students couldn't solve that simple problem and acted as if it were difficult. Blair says he doesn't know how he came to this world, but seeing how everyone is stupid, he might reach the top, reach the pinnacle of life using mathematics. We see a girl with pink hair. She and the protagonist end up bumping into each other. Our boy asks if she's okay, but the two are in a somewhat suspicious situation. Noticing this, Blair immediately gets off her. He quickly apologizes, saying he wasn't paying attention. The blonde girl steps back, saying it's him again. The protagonist sees that she knows him. Very angry, she says that Blair bumped into her at the entrance ceremony and embarrassed her, swearing never to forget. She adds that he bumped into her again, but this time deliberately and vulgarly. From Blair's face, he doesn't know what to say or do. Trying to resolve the situation, the protagonist says she hit him first. Suddenly, the girl makes strange gestures with her hand. Then she seems to be reciting a spell. Our hero sighs, thinking she's crazy. Then he jokes, doing the same thing, but in a funny way. A strange symbol suddenly appears. The girl's hand is on fire. She says she will go after Blair with everything she has. From her expression, the ending wasn't so easy. The boy doesn't know what to do when he gets a fireball in the face, but the girl yells at him to be ready to be punished. The protagonist has a great idea. Before being killed, he bows and apologizes profusely for what happened. Of course, the blonde didn't expect that. Clenching her fist, she asks him not to think it's over just because of those apologies. But when she finishes saying that our hero is no longer there, Blair is running as if his life depends on it. In his mind, nothing makes sense because magic and science coexist. Suddenly, the protagonist's head starts to hurt. Because of this, he ends up fainting. Fragments of Blair's memories are wandering through his mind, and we see him crying, asking for his father. The general died honorably fighting. Someone hands over a box, offering condolences. A hand and a son in front of a house. Around them, people say that after the general died, the woman became just a poor ex-noble who needs to work. Blair is heading towards his mother, telling her he got into college. She says he must study hard, and meanwhile, the boy says he has grown up. In her mind, her son is identical to his father. An old man asks Blair to hurry. If he can't do it, he won't be able to sleep there in the future. The boy says he will definitely come home. Our protagonist knows that the owner of this body, despite working so hard, never had a talent for magic, and he was always insulted by his classmates. Returning to the present, his friend calls him, asking if Blair is okay. He says her name is Jasmine, but wonders how she found him there. Being very kind, she extends her hand to help him up. Blair thanks her, but thinks to himself that the previous owner had a hard life, so from now on, it will be up to him. In the classroom, the teacher is teaching the 4 types of magical elements. The bald man says that this world is divided between ordinary people and those who can use magic, and their school is the best and most famous among all the others. Magic is divided into 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. Through gestures, the mage can use spiritual energy to manifest such power. We see that after the class, students are happy to finally be able to leave. We see the same boy a little sad after hearing these statements. Before leaving, our boy calls for his teacher. He asks what dear Blair wants. The protagonist asks the teacher if a person without talent can still use magic. Being arrogant, he says the boy has asked that many times. Then he leaves, saying it's impossible to use magic without the necessary talent. People around are mocking him for being so serious but still having no talent. His friend arrives and says Blair doesn't need to be sad if he doesn't graduate, because if he can't, he will work on his father's estate. In his memories, the protagonist remembers that this is Toby, Blair's best and only friend. The boy is smiling for having driven away the guys who were bothering him. Toby says he's leaving, and our boy waves goodbye. While Jasmine watches, looking back, the protagonist asks if she has something to say, and being very shy, the girl answers no. Then she runs off, saying that teacher Brittany is calling him to the office. Blair thinks she's strange for always sneaking around and watching him all the time. Stealthy says it's ironic to have an absurd knowledge of math but no talent for magic. Our boy tries to recite a fireball spell, but as expected, nothing happens. His expression is one of disappointment, but something appears, emanating the reddish aura. Hot fire comes out of his hand. It makes a spiral around his arm. In his subconscious, Blair didn't expect this. After all, doing this is impossible without talent. Putting that aside, the protagonist starts playing with the fireball. After all, it's not every day that you go to another world. Our boy says that maybe because he's a traveler, he must have been enlightened. But he soon remembers that he needs to go to the office of the great teacher Brittany. The sunset seems to be approaching. Blair knocks on the door, calling her. When he enters, he apologizes for being late. For some reason, our boy blushes. And the reason is in one of the teacher's poses. We see that the protagonist is infatuated with her. She smiles, saying he finally arrived. Brittany asks him not to mind her strange poses. Then she asks Blair to sit in a chair. The woman says she prepared hundreds of calculations for him to do. She soon throws all the papers on the table. Brittany says she will leave and asks the boy not to rush. Suddenly, the protagonist already says the answer to the question. At the same moment, she asks if that's possible. Then she runs towards Blair. She soon says that if it were her, she wouldn't be able to do it. Our boy doesn't know what to say to the woman in front of him. Being friendly, Brittany asks if he can explain how he solved the question. Blair is defeated by the power of her cuteness. In his mind, he says his teacher is more foolish than usual. Hitting the table, Blair says he did the operation in sequence, but the problem and the statement were very prone to errors. Brittany says there's only one solution and one way to do this. He says that's not right, because for this problem, you just need to find a pattern. Sum all the penultimate numbers until they add up to 80. Pointing to the board, the protagonist asks if she knows what the sum of all the penultimate numbers can be to get 80. Very excited, she raises her hand and says 39. Blair says the answer is correct and then asks her to sit down. Our boy explains that from a tedious addition problem, the account became a simple multiplication problem. With this kind of method, you can solve several problems in an easy way. Brittany asks how there can be such an intelligent way. She then adds that this solution can be more generalized. If you sum all the numbers of a constant period, then the formula can be described as simple. With various calculations, the teacher's head ends up in another world. Our boy wakes her up, asking if everyone in this world is that dumb. She responds with another question, asking if this is the solution. Smiling, Blair says it's easier to calculate this way and everyone can do it too. Taking our boy's hand, the woman says he's a genius. If he is willing to always study, his future will be unlimited. Brittany doesn't know, but is emanating a terrifying force that is overwhelming the protagonist. Stepping back, she apologizes for getting a bit too excited. Brittany asks if Blair wants to be a great mathematician. He says no and adds that he wants to be a great magician. Hearing this, the teacher becomes sad. Brittany passionately says that he received intelligence given by the gods and shouldn't waste it. And as far as she knows, he has no talent for magic. Because no matter how Blair looks at it, the answer to everything is mathematics. Our Sigma boy pushes her away immediately and says that no matter what, he will indeed become a magician. In his mind, Blair says that if he just threw in some advanced equations, he could become a great mathematician. But those are just works of another world. In his perspective, magic is much more attractive than any equation or square root. Brittany asks if the protagonist dares to make a bet with her. In a few days, there will be a magic test in the classroom, and this test will determine Blair's future at the academy. Our boy says he already knows that the woman says that if he really wants to be a magician, he must pass the test. And she adds that this will be like a game. If Blair doesn't pass, she will do something to keep him at school, but he will have to be a mathematician. But if he manages to pass, Brittany will no longer insist and asks what the protagonist thinks. In her mind, she says this is a lost game for the boy who has no talent. Still, the protagonist accepts. Leaving there, Blair says that his teacher is very persistent. He remembers what she said before about not forgetting the agreement. Our boy stops thinking about it and refocuses his mind on studying magic. Turning to the side, we see the fire girl. As if it were destiny, the two bump into each other. Before falling, Blair says this feeling is familiar. When he looks and sees who it is, he is shocked. The girl goes at him this time to kill him. She soon recites the fire spell. A ball of the recited element appears in her hand. But looking ahead, the protagonist is no longer there and says that if he had stayed, he would have been burned. Brittany asks why Isabel seems so unhappy since she arrived. Immediately, the girl says she encountered a pervert at school and adds that next time she will definitely burn him alive. Isabel throws the papers on the table, saying she had already solved the problems. She is happy since it only took her half an hour. Brittany says Isabel is almost faster than her, but says Blair took only 1 minute. She doesn't know what to say, and in her head, this is impossible, and asks who this boy is. Her teacher says he used a solution never seen before. Brittany tells Isabel what the protagonist taught. She says it is a very intelligent way to solve it. Very excited, she asks her teacher to introduce her to Blair. Brittany notices that the girl is very enthusiastic and then says she will do it. Moments later, Isabel kicks the classroom door, asking who here is Blair. Toby already suspects his friend is in trouble. Someone pinches him from under the table. This is our boy asking him to stay quiet. Toby tells her that the protagonist left the room. Of course, Isabel suspects the situation. Leaving, she asks that when he arrives to tell him she wants to talk to him. The protagonist's friend is a bit nervous but says he will indeed let him know. The girl slams the door and leaves. Blair comes out from under the table. Everyone is in great silence. The boy doesn't seem well as he had to face his senpai. Toby asks what the hell the protagonist did. Our boy is deeply confused because he doesn't know who she is. His friend says he really seems like a robot who only knows how to study and work. Toby says Isabel has many followers at the academy, and if those guys find out Blair offended her, things won't end well. Our boy says the academy has rules and they can't do whatever they want. Toby asks if the boy knows where the school is. Blair doesn't know how to respond, so he says something like in the Sea of Apollo. His friend asks him not to be so stupid. Isabel's father is the Lord of Apollo City. Our boy asks if there's still time to apologize. Someone in the background shouts about the protagonist touching Lady Isabel. The bully says he won't do anything since Blair will be expelled after failing the test. Toby notices that the guy wants to start a fight. The bully explains that just having good grades allows you to stay in the academy, but after graduation to remain, you must know magic. Therefore, all second-year students have to take a test, and if they fail, they are expelled immediately. However, for normal students, this is like a walk in the park. But this changes because Blair has no talent. In his mind, the protagonist understands why teacher Brittany chose this test for the agreement. To get attention, the bully slams the table. He asks if Blair didn't hear what he said, and adds that the boy is just a bastard orphan. After saying this, Toby stands up from his chair. He then asks if the bully wants to fight. Arrogantly, the bully says it's none of his business. Toby says the protagonist is his friend, and it's his duty to protect him. The bully gets angry and says he'll remember this. Leaving, he says that next time he'll settle this. In his mind, the protagonist says this chubby guy might not seem reliable, but in critical moments he is very loyal. Confidently, our boy asks if Isabel came to bother him, would he do the same? Toby says if the girl asked him to hit the protagonist, he would do it instantly. These words leave Blair desolate. The day of the test arrives, and the teacher explains that the magic everyone will use is the fireball and adds that this is basic, so most should pass. In this test, besides reciting the spell, students must hit the target. The teacher asks the bully to start. We then see the guy reciting the spell. He soon throws the fireball and hits the target, passing with 8 points. The teacher calls the next person. The bully sees our boy in the crowd and tells him to enjoy his last moment in the academy. Toby tells the bully to shut up. The next person will be the chubby guy. He recites the spell just like the bully. Small fireball appears and he struggles to maintain it. Toby throws it towards the target. A small spark reaches it, and the teacher says it counts. Of course, the boy is happy about that. The teacher looks at the protagonist's document and already knows he has no talent for magic. He sighs, saying that Blair is a little fool. The teacher was about to say that everyone passed, but the bully interrupts to say something. He says one person is still missing.